It was supposed to be a romantic getaway, just the two of us. But when I saw the text on his phone, my world shattered. Can't wait to see you again tonight, Red Heart. My hands trembled as I scrolled further. Pictures, late-night calls, secrets I had no clue about. And then it hit me. The betrayal wasn't with a stranger. It was someone I knew. Emily and Jason had always been the perfect couple, or so everyone thought. High school sweethearts turned partners in life. Their relationship was the kind that made others believe in fairy tales. Emily, a kindergarten teacher, adored children and had a nurturing spirit that made her loved by all. Jason, a charismatic marketing executive, was the life of every gathering, always making others laugh. Together, they had built a picture-perfect life in their cozy suburban home. Their mornings started with shared coffee on the patio, talking about their day ahead. Emily would often pack Jason's lunch with little notes inside, a habit she had maintained for years. Jason would always kiss her on the forehead before leaving for work, a ritual she cherished deeply. But beneath this idyllic surface, Emily had begun to sense subtle changes. Jason's laughter didn't reach his eyes as often as it used to. He started coming home later than usual, with vague excuses about work meetings or client dinners. Emily brushed it off, convincing herself she was overthinking. After all, he still brought her flowers occasionally and remembered their anniversary last month with a surprise dinner. Yet cracks in their seemingly flawless life were beginning to show. Emily noticed how Jason kept his phone face down at all times, a behavior he'd never displayed before. His sudden obsession with the gym and frequent late-night workout sessions seemed out of character. When she casually asked about his schedule, his responses were curt, almost defensive. Despite the doubts gnawing at her, Emily tried to stay optimistic. She threw herself into her work, planning art projects for her students and preparing for their upcoming school play. She believed that love, trust, and a bit of effort could fix anything. Little did she know, her world was on the brink of unraveling. Her best friend Claire had warned her once, saying, "Emily, don't ignore the signs. If something feels off, it probably is." Emily had laughed it off then. But now, those words echoed in her mind as Jason grew more distant, and she found herself wondering if she really knew the man she had vowed to spend her life with. The unease that had been simmering in Emily's mind began to grow. At first, it was the small things, Jason's sudden obsession with his appearance, the lingering cologne that wasn't his usual scent, and the way he smiled at his phone screen when he thought no one was watching. But soon those small things became impossible to ignore. One evening, as Emily sat on the couch scrolling through her phone, Jason walked in late from another supposed business dinner. He looked flustered, his shirt slightly wrinkled, and his tie loosened. When she asked how the meeting went, his response was dismissive. "It was fine, just exhausting," he muttered before heading straight to the shower without so much as a glance in her direction. Emily couldn't help but notice the faint lipstick stain on his collar, a color she never wore. That night, her thoughts spiraled. Was she imagining things? Could there be a logical explanation? She decided to shake it off. But the gnawing suspicion refused to let her rest. The next morning, as Jason showered, she did something she had never done in their years together. She unlocked his phone. Her hands shook as she scrolled through his messages, but everything seemed normal at first. No incriminating texts, no strange calls. Just as relief washed over her, she noticed a contact saved as M. The messages between Jason and M were vague but unsettling. "Last night was incredible. I can't stop thinking about you." Jason's reply was equally damning. "Me too. Can't wait to see you again." Emily felt her stomach drop. Her heart raced as she stared at the screen, her mind refusing to accept what her eyes were seeing. Who was this person? How long had this been going on? She was tempted to confront Jason immediately, but something stopped her. She needed more answers, more proof. Over the next few days, Emily began piecing together the puzzle. She started noting Jason's behavior more closely, his frequent late-night gym sessions, his sudden disinterest in their plans, and the way he guarded his phone as if his life depended on it. Her worst fears seemed to be coming true. Her growing suspicion started affecting her own behavior. She found herself becoming distant, unable to meet his gaze, and constantly second-guessing everything he said. One evening, she confided in Claire. "What if he's cheating on me?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Claire didn't look surprised. "Emily, you deserve the truth. If he's hiding something, you have every right to know." Fueled by Claire's encouragement, Emily decided to dig deeper. She followed Jason one evening, claiming she was working late. Her heart pounded as she drove behind his car, trying to stay far enough to remain unnoticed. Her worst nightmare came to life when Jason pulled into the parking lot of a small cafe, where a woman, young, elegant, and unmistakably familiar, was waiting for him. Emily recognized her immediately. It was Megan, their mutual friend from college. From her car, Emily watched as Jason and Megan hugged, their embrace far too intimate to be platonic. They sat down, their conversation animated and full of smiles. Every laugh, every shared glance felt like a dagger to Emily's heart. She clutched the steering wheel, fighting back tears, unsure whether to storm in or retreat. By the time she got home, Emily was consumed by anger, betrayal, and heartbreak. The man she thought she knew, the life she thought they had built together, suddenly felt like a lie. But amidst the chaos of her emotions, one thing became clear. She needed to confront Jason, and she needed answers. Emily's confrontation with Jason wasn't immediate. She wrestled with her emotions for days, trying to decide how to approach the situation. But her patience wore thin when Jason casually mentioned another late-night meeting, leaving her alone in the house once again. This time, she wasn't going to sit idly by. As the door closed behind him, Emily found herself overcome with a mix of dread and determination. She paced the living room, the anger bubbling inside her. The images of Jason and Megan laughing at the cafe were seared into her mind. She couldn't shake the betrayal, nor could she ignore the burning question. How long had this been going on? Desperate for clarity, Emily decided to call Megan. She hadn't spoken to her in months, not since a casual catch-up dinner where Megan had been unusually inquisitive about Jason's work schedule and habits. At the time, Emily thought nothing of it, chalking it up to Megan's overly friendly nature. Now she saw those moments in a completely different light. The phone rang 3 times before Megan answered, her voice bright and cheerful. "Hey, Emily. It's been so long. How are you?" Emily's voice trembled as she replied. "I think you know why I'm calling, Megan. I need to know what's going on between you and Jason." There was a pause on the other end of the line, a silence so heavy it felt like the air had been sucked out of the room. Finally, Megan spoke, her tone defensive. "Emily, I don't know what you're talking about. Jason and I are just friends. You're being ridiculous." But Emily wasn't buying it. "I saw you, Megan. At the cafe. I saw how you looked at him, how he touched your hand. Don't insult me by pretending it's nothing." Megan sighed, her voice softening. "Emily, I never meant for this to happen. It just did. We didn't plan it." Emily hung up before she could hear more. Her chest felt like it was caving in. The admission confirmed everything she feared, but it didn't make the betrayal any easier to bear. When Jason returned that night, she confronted him. She stood in the kitchen, her arms crossed, her eyes brimming with tears. "I know, Jason. I know about Megan. Don't even try to deny it." Jason froze, his keys still in his hand. For a moment, he looked like a deer caught in headlights. Then, his expression shifted to something Emily couldn't quite place. Regret? Guilt? Anger? "Emily, I can explain," he began, his voice calm but unconvincing. "It's not what you think. Not what I think." Emily snapped. "Then what is it, Jason? Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you've been lying to me for months. Was anything in our marriage real?" Jason sighed, running a hand through his hair. "It's complicated, Em. Megan and I, it just happened. I didn't mean to hurt you." His words were like a slap to the face. "It just happened," she repeated, her voice rising. "You don't accidentally fall into someone else's arms, Jason. You made a choice to betray me, to betray everything we built together." As the argument escalated, emotions ran high. Jason admitted to the affair, though he tried to downplay its significance. It wasn't serious, he claimed. It didn't mean anything. But Emily wasn't buying it. The intimacy she had seen between him and Megan told a different story. The texts she had read, the moments she had witnessed, all of it pointed to a connection far deeper than Jason was willing to admit. Over the next few days, the tension in their home was unbearable. Jason tried to act as though things could go back to normal, but Emily knew better. She couldn't unsee the betrayal, couldn't undo the damage that had been done. And yet, she found herself conflicted. Despite the hurt, a part of her still clung to the life they had shared, the love they once had. Then came the night that changed everything. Jason had gone to bed early, and Emily sat alone in the living room, staring at the flickering flames in the fireplace. Her phone buzzed, and she saw a message from an unknown number. "I'm sorry for everything. I never wanted to hurt you. Please don't blame Jason entirely. It was my fault too. Megan." Emily stared at the message, her emotions a whirlwind of anger, sadness, and confusion. The fact that Megan had the audacity to contact her was infuriating, but it also confirmed what Emily had feared all along. Jason wasn't the man she thought he was, and Megan wasn't the friend she believed her to be. As the night stretched on, Emily made a decision. She couldn't live like this, trapped in a web of lies and betrayal. She needed to confront her own feelings, to decide whether forgiveness was even an option, or if it was time to walk away from the life she had built with Jason. Emily's resolve hardened as the days passed. She couldn't continue living in limbo, torn between love and betrayal. The truth was out in the open now, and there was no escaping it. Yet, Jason seemed to cling to the illusion that they could sweep everything under the rug and move on. But Emily knew better. There was no moving forward without facing the storm head-on. One evening, Emily asked Jason to sit down for a conversation. Her voice was steady, but her hands trembled as she spoke. "I need to understand, Jason. I need to know why you did this. Why Megan? Why now?" Jason looked down, unable to meet her gaze. "It wasn't about you, Emily," he began, his voice barely above a whisper. "I was stressed at work, feeling like I wasn't good enough. Megan was just there. She listened when I felt like no one else would." Emily felt a sharp pang in her chest. "So this is my fault? Because I didn't listen enough? Do you have any idea how that sounds?" "No," Jason said quickly, his tone desperate. "That's not what I mean. It wasn't about blame. I felt lost, and she made me feel seen again." The words stung more than Emily expected. She had spent years supporting Jason, encouraging him through his career struggles, celebrating his victories. Yet, in his moment of doubt, he had turned to someone else. The betrayal ran deeper than she realized. But the confrontation didn't end there. Emily had one more question burning in her mind. "How long has it been going on?" Jason hesitated, the weight of the truth evident in his expression. 6 months, he admitted, his voice cracking. "It started as nothing, just casual conversations. But then it escalated. 6 months. Half a year of secrets, lies, and stolen moments." Emily felt the ground beneath her shift. How had she missed the signs for so long? She thought back to every late night, every vague excuse, every dismissive comment. The pieces of the puzzle clicked into place, forming a picture she wished she could unsee. But Jason wasn't the only one who owed her answers. Emily decided to confront Megan directly. She drove to her apartment the next day, fueled by a mix of anger and determination. When Megan opened the door, her expression shifted from surprise to guilt. "Emily, I didn't think you'd come here," she said, her voice soft. "Why wouldn't I?" Emily shot back. "You've already invaded my life in every other way. Might as well face me now." Megan stepped aside, allowing Emily to enter. The apartment was pristine, decorated with an effortless elegance that made Emily feel out of place. As they sat down, Megan spoke first. "I'm sorry, Emily. I never wanted to hurt you." "Then why did you?" Emily asked, her voice trembling with emotion. "You were my friend, Megan. I trusted you." Megan looked down, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. "I didn't mean for it to happen. It started so innocently, just talking, laughing. I didn't think it would go further. But then it did." Emily's anger flared. "You didn't think? That's your excuse? You didn't think about the fact that you were destroying my marriage, my life?" Megan's eyes filled with tears, but Emily felt no sympathy. The betrayal was too raw, too deep. Megan's apologies felt hollow, her explanations meaningless. Emily stood up, her decision made. "I don't care about your excuses, Megan. You made your choice. And now, I'm making mine." Back at home, Emily found Jason waiting for her, his expression hopeful. "Did you talk to her?" he asked. "Yes," Emily replied coldly. "And it didn't change anything. You both betrayed me, and there's no coming back from that." Jason's face fell, but Emily didn't waver. She had spent too long sacrificing her own happiness for the sake of their relationship. Now it was time to put herself first. The climax of their story came to a head when Emily announced her decision. "I'm leaving, Jason. I can't do this anymore." Jason pleaded, his voice breaking. "Emily, please. We can fix this. I'll do anything." But Emily shook her head, her resolve unshaken. "You already made your choice, Jason. And now I'm making mine." The days that followed were a blur of packing boxes, legal paperwork, and painful goodbyes. Emily leaned on Claire for support, finding solace in her friend's unwavering presence. Though the pain of betrayal lingered, Emily began to see a glimmer of hope on the horizon. A chance to rebuild her life, free from lies and deceit. The aftermath of Emily's decision to leave Jason was both liberating and devastating. For years, her identity had been tied to her role as Jason's wife, the one who stood by him through every triumph and failure. Now, as she stood in the empty house with boxes stacked around her, she felt the weight of what she was leaving behind. The first night in her new apartment was the hardest. The silence was deafening, a stark contrast to the life she once shared with Jason. She stared at the blank walls, the absence of memories making her feel unmoored. But as the tears came, so did a sense of relief. For the first time in months, she wasn't pretending. She wasn't smiling through the pain or swallowing her doubts. She was finally facing the truth. And it hurt, but it also felt right. Jason didn't make it easy for her to move on. He called constantly, begging her to reconsider. His messages oscillated between desperate apologies and angry accusations. "I made a mistake, Emily. Please, we can fix this," he said in one voicemail. In another, his tone was harsher. "You're throwing everything away because of one mistake. You're not even giving me a chance." But Emily had heard enough. His regret, though genuine, couldn't erase the betrayal. She blocked his number after a particularly heated exchange, needing space to heal without the constant reminders of what she'd lost. Meanwhile, Megan seemed to vanish from their social circle, avoiding mutual friends and gatherings. The gossip spread quickly, and soon everyone knew about the affair. Emily dreaded the pitying looks and whispered conversations, but she refused to let it break her. She attended events with her head held high, determined to reclaim her life on her own terms. One evening, as she was sorting through old photos, Emily found a picture from their wedding day. She stared at the smiling faces, the promises made, the love that once felt unshakable. A pang of sadness hit her, but it was quickly replaced by a steely resolve. That version of her was gone, replaced by someone stronger, someone who wouldn't settle for anything less than she deserved. Claire became Emily's rock during this time, encouraging her to focus on herself. "You've spent so much of your life taking care of others, Emily. Now it's time to take care of you," she said one afternoon over coffee. Emily took those words to heart. Enrolling in a pottery class, she'd always wanted to try and rediscovering her passion for painting. Slowly but surely, she began to rebuild. Jason, however, struggled to move on. Mutual friends told Emily that he was often seen drinking alone at their favorite bar, his usual charm replaced with a somber demeanor. He tried to date again, but every relationship ended quickly. "No one compares to you," he wrote in a letter he mailed to her. Emily read it once, then tucked it away in a drawer, unsure if she'd ever want to revisit it. As months passed, Emily began to see the affair for what it was, a breaking point in a marriage that had been eroding for years. Jason's betrayal was inexcusable, but it forced her to confront the ways they had both drifted apart. She started therapy, determined to heal the wounds and understand how to build healthier relationships in the future. One afternoon, while walking through the park, Emily ran into Megan. The encounter was awkward, to say the least. Megan looked frail, her confident demeanor replaced with a nervous energy. "Emily," she said, her voice tentative, "I'm so sorry for everything. I've lost so much because of my mistakes." Emily took a deep breath, the anger she once felt now replaced with something softer. Pity, perhaps, or understanding. "I don't need your apology, Megan. But I hope you've learned something from all of this," she said before walking away. She didn't look back. Over time, Emily found a sense of peace she hadn't felt in years. She surrounded herself with supportive friends, threw herself into her work, and explored new hobbies. The pain of betrayal lingered, but it no longer defined her. She learned to forgive, not for Jason or Megan, but for herself. Forgiveness didn't mean forgetting. It meant letting go of the hold the past had on her. The final step in her journey came when she returned to the house she once shared with Jason to collect the last of her things. The once vibrant home felt empty, its warmth gone. As she walked through the rooms, she realized something. She wasn't leaving a home, she was leaving a chapter of her life that no longer served her. When she stepped outside, the sun was setting, casting a golden glow over the neighborhood. Emily smiled, a genuine smile that came from a place of hope and self-assurance. She had survived the heartbreak, the betrayal, and the fallout. And now, she was ready to embrace whatever came next. Months turned into a year, and Emily found herself reflecting on how far she had come. The pain of Jason's betrayal no longer consumed her. Instead, it had become a lesson, a harsh but necessary reminder of her strength and resilience. She had rebuilt her life, not as the woman defined by her marriage, but as someone who had rediscovered her identity. Emily's days were now filled with purpose and joy. She had turned her passion for painting into a small side business, selling her artwork at local markets. Her new apartment, once a symbol of loneliness, was now a sanctuary, a space filled with bright colors, plants, and the vibrant energy of a life fully lived. Therapy had been a crucial part of her healing journey. Through her sessions, Emily learned to unpack not just the pain of Jason's infidelity, but also the ways she had lost herself in the relationship. She realized that she had often prioritized Jason's needs over her own, sacrificing her dreams and desires in the process. Now, she vowed never to lose herself in someone else again. One evening, Emily sat with Claire over wine, reflecting on everything that had happened. "I used to think I couldn't survive without Jason," she admitted. "But now I see that leaving him wasn't the end of my life. It was the beginning of a better one." Claire raised her glass. "To new beginnings," she said with a smile, and Emily couldn't help but laugh. It was the kind of laughter she hadn't felt in years, free, unburdened, genuine. Emily's relationship with Jason remained distant but civil. They had exchanged a few emails regarding the division of their remaining assets, but there was no animosity. For all his flaws, Jason had respected her decision to leave and hadn't tried to interfere in her new life. In one of his emails, he wrote, "I hope you find the happiness I couldn't give you." For the first time, Emily felt no anger reading his words, only a quiet sense of closure. As for Megan, she remained a distant memory. Emily didn't dwell on her or the affair. It wasn't about Megan anymore. It was about Emily's journey and the lessons she had learned. She realized that holding on to anger only gave power to the people who hurt her, and she refused to let them control her life. Through her experiences, Emily discovered the power of forgiveness. Not for the sake of Jason or Megan, but for herself. Forgiveness allowed her to release the pain and make room for happiness. It was a slow process, but one that ultimately freed her. One day, while attending a local art exhibit, Emily met someone new. His name was Mark, a photographer with a kind smile and an easygoing charm. Their conversations flowed effortlessly, and for the first time in a long while, Emily felt a spark. But this time, she approached the relationship differently. She set boundaries, communicated openly, and prioritized her own happiness. Mark wasn't there to complete her. He was there to complement the life she had already built. Emily's story became one of growth, resilience, and self-discovery. She had learned that heartbreak, while painful, could also be a catalyst for transformation. She no longer viewed Jason's betrayal as the end of her happiness, but as the moment that set her free. In the quiet moments of her day, Emily often reflected on the journey she had taken. She thought about the nights she cried herself to sleep, the mornings she woke up determined to move forward, and the countless small victories that had brought her to where she was now. Life had a way of breaking people, but it also had a way of rebuilding them stronger than before. As she stood in her studio one afternoon, surrounded by her paintings and the soft hum of music, Emily smiled to herself. She had found peace, not in a perfect life, but in a life that was hers. The scars of her past were still there, but they no longer defined her. They were simply part of her story, a story of strength, resilience, and the power of starting over. If you were in Emily's shoes, what would you have done? Could you forgive such a betrayal, or would you walk away too? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more stories that will make you question everything. And stay tuned, next week's story is even more shocking. You won't believe what happens when secrets come to light.